I think it's important for us to start getting to know each other.
Yeah, please feel free to take the floor. Whoever has any feedback for Arthur, please. عم بعدهم عم يستحوا يرفعوا ايدهم. اوكي عايشة.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, but we cannot see you, which is a very big problem.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, please cameras on.
Yeah, sure. I
Perfect.
just want to make sure that you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so basically I wanted to say that it's going great. هلا الكورس الصراحة أنا كتير مأخرة، يعني ماني كتير عم تابع وما سلمت كل شيء by the deadline. Thanks أنه you extended the deadline ل May 11 I believe. So now I have more time. بس إنه with the team we're working on the deliverables like the prototype, the pitch deck and everything else. But still now I didn't submit anything. بس إن شاء الله أكيد we'll make sure يعني to submit it by the deadline.
Perfect. Yes, please make sure to do so. And if you need any support, reach out to the team.
Yeah,
But
sure.
it's important to do it before the deadline. That no, we look at the deliverables to decide who gets to present on stage, right? So that we accept you to the next phase of the program. And the second phase of the program is where we start working all of us together one-on-one, right? So that's where the one-on-one mentorship starts kicking in. Because once we accept you in the phase two, it means you're one of our startups, right? So we fully invest in you and we help you turn into a global company. The first sign for us that you're a startup that we want to invest in is we look at the deliverables, the seriousness of the work, the commitment, and so on. Ali, did you want to say something?
Yes, honestly, بس Ken, I wanted to say a shout out, that the program is one of a kind in the region, honestly, because I've seen some ecosystems do their job, yet iPort is the best, honestly. The guys are super helpful, especially apologies on a board, so you might hear some noise. Thank you so much, guys. Everything is clear, honestly, and super helpful.
Amazing. Nadeem?
Hi, yes. So mainly it's a mixture of what Ali said and what Aisha said. This has been really amazing. I had an idea, and when I started the live sessions alone, like this idea just like blew up and it just changed because of everything that I learned. And it's just on a whole other level right now. So I just want to say thank you so much. This has been really helpful. Yani, even if we're not chosen to move forward, you gave us something to really work on for like in our career. And as Aisha said, I'm also a bit behind on my deliverables. The issue is I don't have anyone on my team, so I have to do literally everything alone, and it's too overwhelming currently. As you know, we're handling our jobs, our personal lives, our other jobs because we have lots of things going on. So this is also proving to be a bit difficult to manage like my time when it comes to meeting the deliverables and as well finishing everything else on time. But hopefully this week is going to be like completely focused just on those deliverables so we
Yeah,
can be ready in time.
I understand, and I know the phase that you're in. We all started in that phase, but the good thing is that this phase usually is not everlasting. It's just usually the first 6 to 12 months, which the entire journey is very difficult, but in the first 6 to 12 months, because you're still not a full timer. Now, luckily, most of our startups starting phase two end up raising investment throughout the journey and throughout the process. And when you raise investment, it's usually when you can start paying yourself a salary and you can go full time on the platform on your startup. But anytime you get started, yes, you're usually either alone or with one other co-founder. You have other jobs, you have families. But again, entrepreneurship is not like being a student, right? So life doesn't wait for you. You have to make things happen. There's no sick notes, there's no sick leave, there's no excuses because the market doesn't care. And we as a university with this program, we don't treat you as students, we treat you as entrepreneurs, which means I don't really care if you have a sick note, right? We're not going to look at it. It's not the point. You're not students. You're building your own business. You're building your future. Hani, can we get started, or should we let Abdulaziz as well say something
Yeah,
and then
we
we get
can take
started?
we can take one more. We can start.
Perfect.
Abdulaziz.
Hi, how are you? It's great meeting you all. I joined the program a bit late with the startup, so this is the first time I'm meeting the staff, so it's great meeting you all. Just wanted to say it's been very helpful. So my brother and I started the startup and we joined the accelerator kind of pen on paper. So the kind of the sprints helped us just give us a roadmap to how to quickly kind of ramp up from idea to actually start getting something, how to figure out how to do a website. So thank you for that. Just had one question kind of for the sprint. So as it was a pen on paper kind of thing, I look back, I'm thinking some of the sprints I could have submitted something better. Maybe you could have clarified a few things you recommend, like going back and visiting it again and submitting something better, or just like keep moving forward with the pitch.
I believe that's something for Hani to reply.
Yeah, you can replace the links. There's no problem. Yeah, you have until the 11th of May to give us the final links. So feel free to go back and change the links.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. So the reason why I wanted to start with a bit of questions is starting today, this needs to be a lot more interactive, right? So my aim today is to start building a relationship with you all, because as you are proceeding to the next levels, we're going to be building this together. And the more open conversations we have, the more transparent we are, and the more we actually connect, the more you're going to notice you're actually benefiting. Because the number one benefit of a program like iPark, and I'm going to tell you this honestly, is not really the content that we give you as part of the program. It's more the personal relationships that you're going to be building along the way. At the end of the day, your network really determines how successful you are, right? And we're going to start practicing together. So today, again, we remove your student cap, right? This is not a classroom. This is not me coming and giving you a lecture and leaving. So together, we're here because you all have an idea and you want to turn this into a success story. And I used to be the worst student in university, but I was always one of the most active entrepreneurs in accelerator programs. And that has always made a huge difference. Because the difference is in university, for me, it was very passive. I never understood why I was doing something. When I decided to build my own company, I had the vision and I believed that was worth giving everything that I had. And that's always going to be the difference between those who make it and those who don't. It's your willingness to go that extra mile. It's your willingness to commit. It's your willingness to build that network. Sorry, just give me one sec. All right, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I got a call, and for some reason I decided to ring on my laptop, and I couldn't turn it off.
Hmm.
All right, so before we start, has anyone ever done any public speaking? Has anyone ever presented before? All right, so we have Reem. Actually, I cannot see all the faces. So Reem, Aisha, anyone else?
Yeah, we have a few.
Perfect. Amazing. So I personally love giving this session every year to our startups, and I'm going to be giving it multiple times, and you're always going to be working with me on your pitches, because I believe that pitching is one of the most fundamentally important skills that you can have in entrepreneurship. It's a lot of times the startups that end up raising investment are sometimes not the best startups. Sometimes they're actually the best presenters. Because when you're presenting, you're actually creating the story around your company. Now, here's the funny thing. While pitching is one of the most important things in entrepreneurship, can you guys guess what is the number one fear in the world? It's actually the fear of public speaking. And the second biggest fear in the world is the fear of death. So when I heard that, I was always fascinated by knowing that one of the most fundamental things that I have to do is actually one of the scariest things that people have to go through. So in my mind, it was like, okay, so if I can perfect my public speaking skills, if I can be a really good presenter, maybe that will give me an edge over others. And along the way in my career, I noticed that that was actually a very, very good thing to do, because sometimes I would go on stage and I might not have the most advanced company, but we're always one of the most memorable companies on stage because we always pitch really well. At the end of the day, when you're pitching on stage, you're never really going to raise investment while you're on stage. You only have two objectives when you're presenting. Your first objective is you want to tell a story. And telling a story is important because the difference between telling a story and talking is when I tell a story, I take you from beginning to end. My vision, my aim is to captivate you and to take you on a journey with me. It needs to be ups and downs. My tonality has to change, but I also have to get you emotionally committed and emotionally involved in what I'm trying to explain when I'm on stage. Versus just presenting or talking is just you stating facts, but it means you did not build a relationship or an emotional connection with your audience. The second priority or the second objective of you being on stage is to book a meeting. So the point is not to present and then to go talk to them after the event and asking them, are you ready to invest? That usually never happens. So you tell a story, you build the curiosity. That's the whole point of being on stage. And then in the after event networking, your whole purpose is to book the next meeting and then the next meeting. And we're going to go through it. Now, the problem with most pitches that we see online is, first of all, they sound very unnatural. So have you ever witnessed someone presenting on stage and you feel like they're very nervous and they don't really know what they're trying to explain to you? A lot of times those are scientists, right, that are trying to explain. You never understand what they're trying to say online or when they're performing. The second problem is that most pitches are actually very long. And the third problem is most pitches are very confusing. So today we're going to try to solve that. We're going to make sure that you guys have the best possible pitch. So how do we do that? First of all, what you need to understand is that for you to sound natural on stage, you really need to prepare, and then over-prepare. At the end of the presentation, we're actually going to go through some advice on how to do that. Second thing is you need to simplify your pitch as much as possible. So you just have to say what you need to say. The rule of thumb is if I can explain my presentation to a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, they need to be able to understand. Even if I'm talking about complicated topics like biotechnology, because whenever you're presenting, majority of the people in your audience are not going to be very experienced with the topic that you're trying to present. So you really need to simplify it and you need to dumb it down. So we don't use jargon. Jargon are usually words that are very industry specific or career specific. Instead, you want to stick to the most basic version of the English language and the English dictionary. And third, we need to practice. So when you're preparing a presentation, there are two elements that you have to look at. There's the design element of the presentation, and then the content that is within the presentation that matters the most. And there are usually 12 slides that you must have. And you guys don't need to take screenshots because we're actually going to send you this presentation. Okay, so, and Hani, are we sending them the recording as well?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. So we're going to send you the recording, we're going to send you the slides, so you don't need to worry about the note taking. So just try to understand. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. So there are 12 slides that we need to have, and those are the slides that will really tell the story. And you can add and remove sometimes, but it really depends on your presentation. So it's important to always start with an introduction. What you're basically trying to do is when you go on stage is you want to tell the people watching that the world today has a certain problem. And they're not able to solve this problem in a very efficient or logical or sustainable way. You as an entrepreneur have a solution on how you can make this better. You have a solution on how you can fix this problem. You have a business model that allows you to monetize on this and to make money. Because if you're not making money, then you're not in business, you're not an entrepreneur, you're more like an NGO. And NGOs, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just not entrepreneurship because you're always begging for donor money. But if you're building a business, then you can be self-reliant and then you can build something a lot bigger. So there's a problem. I have an amazing solution for it. This is how I make money. And this is what I've done so far. So the traction is, what are all the things that I've done for my business that proves that what I'm doing is going to work? So what is my validation? Then you need to tell the world that how big of a market this is, right? So I'm solving a problem, and there's 10 million people in the world that are actually facing this problem today. There are 3 million businesses suffering from this. This is a $500 billion problem. Okay? Then you need to talk a bit about the competition. So what is everyone else doing? How are you going to market this? And we're going to talk about the details of each slide. Who's your team, right? And the team is important because this builds a certain amount of trust. What are you asking for? The ask is usually a mix of investment, plus if you need advice or certain, let's say, experience, you can ask for it. Projections are, what are you going to achieve with this investment? And then how should people get in touch with you? This is the format of the presentation. It's quite simple. And there are two types of presentation that you all need to have, and I want you to think about it as you're designing. We have what we call our stage presentation, and then we have the presentation that we send out by email, and those are not the same. On stage, you want to have minimal amount of text, and you want to highlight the numbers as much as possible. When you send it by email, you need to add a bit more context so that when people are reading, you can also explain to them what are they trying to read or understand, because you're not going to be there with them to explain it. But when you're on stage, you're actually walking them through the slides. Because when people are watching you, they're either reading the slides or they're listening to you. But people are not usually doing the same thing. You want to keep the focus on you when you're on stage, because you are the representative of your company. You are the vibe and you are the spirit. You are the trust. So when people are listening to you, when they look on stage, they just need to be able to validate that what you're saying is there, right? So it helps them with the thought process, but they should not be reading every single thing. So you only want the big bullet points and the big numbers. And you as a presenter should never actually be reading what's on stage, right? You can just take a glimpse to see which slide you're on, but you should already know what the content is. So those are just examples of what an on-stage presentation looks like versus what the same presentation looks like when you send it by email. Those are old slides of my company, by the way. So I'm just showing you what we've used, but I'm also going to show you along the way some examples of how Uber, Airbnb, and other companies prepared their presentations. So this is another example of an email presentation that I would send out. This is the equivalence of that for the stage. Okay, so as you can see, this one has a lot of text, and here it only has designs and bullet points. I usually would advise that you do not use videos in your email. Instead, what we do is we use GIFs, because a GIF, you don't need to play, right? So it's always playing, on a loop. It doesn't get stuck. It doesn't have sound or voice. You will not face any technical issues, but avoid embedding videos within the presentations. For some reason, we've never seen a video successfully play in a public presentation. There's always something that goes wrong when you're presenting and you have a video, and then it makes you, nervous and you have to recover. So just stick to GIFs, and it's good to use GIFs to show what the product is. Now we're going to start with the 11 slides. This is supposed to be 12. So with the 12 slides. Okay, the first one is the introduction. The intro for me is the most important way to start a presentation, because you have 3 to 5 seconds to make an impression. You have 3 to 5 seconds where the person watching is going to decide whether they want to listen to you or if they want to be on their phone while you're talking. Because we all do it, right? Like, I'm guessing half of you are currently on your phone as I'm presenting. And this is going to happen when you're on stage as well. I see some of you, you're actually focused, which is amazing, but those who are not on camera, I'm going to assume that half of you are not. But you have these 3 to 5 seconds. And those 3 to 5 seconds is very important to really show your personality, right? So I am a very sarcastic person. Usually when I'm on stage, if you ever watch me, whether it's presenting, whether it's moderating a panel, so I always start with my dark sense of humor. So it might be a joke, it might be anything else. And the reason why I do that is, first of all, when I open up with something that shows who I am, I feel more comfortable when I'm on stage, and people listening to me are also more comfortable, and they get to know the real me. When you're doing the intro slide, it's important to keep it very simple and to just show, for example, a tagline, a cool design, something before you get on stage, people would look at and be like, this is an interesting topic. So this is Uber's, I actually took this from Uber's early pitch deck, right? So with Uber, for example, it was next generation car service. This was Airbnb's. So Airbnb's first slide is book rooms with locals rather than hotels. Again, the whole point was to build a certain curiosity. Ours, for example, was the future of social commerce with Instagram and TikTok meet Amazon. So the point is, how do I capture enough attention for people to want to listen to what I say when I'm on stage? And I personally like starting with an introduction. So when I'm on stage, I usually say, my name's Arthur. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Lemonade Fashion. I started the company because my boobs were just too big. And that usually is an icebreaker, and people start listening. And then I tell them the problem. I tell them, the problem is that I used to go to the gym a lot, so I could never find outfits that fit me. But my dad used to be a designer, and his friends were all tailors and designers, and they used to create my custom suits. So this does a couple of things. One, it breaks the ice because we started with a joke. Second, I explain to the people listening to me why this problem matters to me. And the fact that my dad is involved means that I have an emotional connection and I have industry access. So it's doing different things at the same time. And you can watch a lot of recorded presentations of Y Combinator startups pitching on YouTube. They actually do a really interesting job. And whenever I'm doing a presentation, and that's why I'm focused so much on this slide, I spend maybe 30 to 40% of my time preparing for a presentation just on the intro. And it's usually the last thing that I work on because I really want to make sure that I capture your attention in the first 3 to 5 seconds. The second slide that you need to have is the problem slide, right? So the problem, again, you need to keep it simple. This is the slide of Airbnb. So Airbnb, they said that the problem today with hotels is that price is an important concern for customers when they're booking an online, room. Hotels make you feel disconnected, right? Because you're not part of the culture, and there's no really easy way to book a room or to become a host. So very clear, 3 problems that they're tackling. Okay, each company has their own, and there are 2 types of problems. We call them the painkiller. So we have painkiller problems, and then we have what we call our vitamin problems.
Arthur,
So
do you want to keep the Q&A till the end, or shall we have the questions come by when they come?
I think we can keep it mostly to the end unless it's a pressing matter, then just ask away, but don't raise the hand because I don't see it while I'm talking. So just ask the question if it's very pressing. If not, let's write it down and then we can open up room for Q&A at the end.
Yeah, I agree with Arthur. Let's do the Q&A at the end, no problem.
Yeah. All right. So I was saying you have an aspirin problem and you have a vitamin problem. So aspirin is a painkiller. What does that mean? There are 2 types of problems. The first one, the painkiller, means that the problem that you're solving is an actual pain point in the market. So people are suffering from it and they really need a solution. The vitamin one means that if we have this solution, it would be nice to have, but it's not a real problem in the current market or the current world. But if this were to happen, it's nice. If you're a painkiller, it's always much more powerful than a vitamin because people need the painkillers, but they will choose whether or not they want the vitamins or not, depending on if they have the extra income or if it's suitable for them or so on. So ideally, you want to be on the painkiller side of the problem. So whenever you're designing your startup, whenever you're building it, always ask yourself when you're looking at the problem, is this a painkiller or is this a vitamin? And then make sure that you explain the painkiller quite well. Okay, so when we were creating our presentation, again, we tried to keep it simple, right? So today, social media and e-commerce are not connected, and brands on social media have misaligned purposes because they're competing with brands from different industries. It's unfair competition. Content creators are struggling to monetize, and people have zero control over their algorithms. This is an older one where we're talking about monopolization, how returns, and how much products are gone to waste every year, right? So you want to have very clear problems. Then you want your solution. Ideally, what you want to do is you want the format of the problem to be a bit close to the solution. So if you stated 3 problems, you want to state 3 solutions to those problems. So with Airbnb, if you remember the 3 problems that they had, right? Which was it's expensive, you feel you don't feel connected to the culture when you book a hotel, and there's no easy platform today. So their solution was a platform that allows you to save money when you're traveling, a platform that allows hosts to make money, and it's a platform that allows you to share the culture of the current city. So they targeted the 3 problems, and the fact that it's a platform covered the problem of the platform. Okay, so in our case, it was the same, right? So we have 3 different topics that we're trying to tackle. So we created a platform with seamless shopping experience where you can shop and buy products from the content. It's a platform where you get organic reviews and content, which allows content creators to monetize. And it's a platform that you can trust because everyone is already vetted. And this is an example of what our technology looks like. So you can always add one extra slide if you want. If your solution is very visual and you want to show the features, then you can add a technology slide as well to show the product, or you can add a product slide. Next, we have the business model. Business model is important. This is where you're showing the world how you're making money. So in Airbnb's case, for example, they take a 10% commission on every transaction. And here they're showing, for example, how many trips they're trying to get booked, what's the average price per booking. So in this case, for example, they take $25 commission when people book for 3 nights. So for every 3 nights with an average price of $80, Airbnb makes $25 on average. Okay, so they're estimating that, so they made $84 million. They take $25 on average per booking, and they're estimating that they're going to hit $200 million in the next couple of years. Okay, so this is how Airbnb makes money. So in our case, again, this is the stage presentation model. So we would tell people that our platform takes a 30% commission on every transaction, and then 70% of every transaction goes back to the brands. This is a simple one. You guys might have subscription models, revenue models, right? So there's advertising models. So there's different ways to monetize. Then the traction. The traction is one of the most important ones because basically what you're telling the world is that my idea is not just a theory. I've actually done a lot of work for it, right? So in Airbnb's case, for example, they've already raised $500,000. They've made 80,000 trips with Airbnb, and they're estimating to generate $2 million in revenue. Right. So in our case, for example, we had done 500% growth in the last 12 months. We had made $550,000 on average, $160 per order. We had 100,000 monthly active users and so on. And those were the projections next to it. So we're basically showing what we've done so far as a business. Okay. Afterwards, you have the market size. In the market size, we see a lot of problems because most people look at a small market And when you're building a business, what you want to have is you want to look at the bigger picture. Because if you're trying to solve a problem that is only worth $2 million, an investor will not really be interested in it. Because if this problem is worth $2 million, even if you take 50% of the market, it's still very small. So ideally, what you want to do is you want to have a big problem that you're trying to tackle and then dissect it into, let's say, global, regional, local, right? Or you can go industry specific. So you have the total market, and then what is the market size that you want to address? And I'm sure this is something you guys have learned in the previous workshops on how to do the TAM, the SAM, and the total addressable one, right? So in Airbnb's case, there are more than 2 billion trips booked worldwide, right? From those 2 billion, there's 560 million that are looking for affordable bookings. And they believe that they will be able to take 84 million of those bookings. Okay. Now, you never want to say on stage that we want to get 1% of a market because usually investors don't like listening to 1% because for them, 1% is very big and they feel like it's an insult if you estimate that it's going to be very easy to take 1% of the market, right? So never say if we just take 1% will be this much. So when you're talking about the market you want to address, right, it's usually best to talk about why you believe you can take that market. So you have to be able to justify it. Right? So in our case, for example, we said that online fashion is $690 billion. The made-to-order fashion industry is $280 billion. And we believe that the online made-to-order industry is $15 billion. So that's how we took a big industry and dissected it to smaller markets. So for the competition slide, you can do this in different ways. You can have this quadrant, right? You always place your logo at the top right. Basically, you want to look at all of the different things that make you unique, and then you fill the competition, logos and the other ones. Another way to do it, which I personally like as well, so this is in the case of Lemonade, this is how we had done it, but I also like having a table format because the table format allows me to explain a bit better what differentiates me over the competition, right? So in this case, you can have your company and then you can have one other company or you can have 3 other companies, right? So the difference between you and your competition, and then what are all the things that make you different. Okay, and the more detailed you can go in this, the better. Because at the end of the day, people want to know what makes you unique. Okay. And one of the best books that I think you can read in entrepreneurship is Peter Thiel's book, which is called 0 to 1. It tells the difference between how a company, for example, like Facebook, was able to go compete with MySpace. Because it wasn't just 10% better. It was 10 times better than what MySpace was doing. So I think that's one of the very interesting books that tells you, teaches you entrepreneurship and how to compete in an existing market. The go-to-market, I think a lot of people get wrong because most of the times what we see in go-to-market is we see a slide that says we're going to do social media advertising. And then in everyone's brains, when we're listening, we're like, no shit. If you're not going to do social media, then what are you going to do? Right? So please don't show us what everyone in the world is already doing. Your go-to market is what makes you unique and different when it comes to opening the market. So what is the unique access that you already have? So it might be that you're already connected with big influencers and celebrities in that industry. Or it might be that you already have a network of doctors and dentists and physicians that will use your product because you're already in the field and you know how to get to them. It might be, for example, that you're an athlete and you already have brand endorsements, whatever it is. What is the special access and the secret sauce that will give you access to the industry? And so in our case, for example, we already had 62 influencers with 100 million followers and more than 300 brands that are using our platform. So for us, that was our go-to-market because we would create the relationship between the brands and the influencers. And actually, some of our campaigns went viral. We had 30 million views on a lot of our different campaigns because we would create the relationship between brand and influencer. So that is a special type of access that you have. The team is, I don't know if it's the most important one, but I would say without it, it's very hard to raise funds. So you need to have a strong team. And it usually starts by you, the founder, or your team of founders. I've spent so much of my time making sure that we find the right partners for the company. And even today, most of my time goes trying to onboard executives. But when you're presenting your team, it's very important to show what makes them different, right? So it's not enough to say, my co-founder, Dana, Mo, Nadim. No. So what you want to talk about the differentiator, what makes them unique. So when I would present, and I think that my team was so much more impressive than I am. So when I would present, I would say, we have an amazing team in fashion and technology. So my co-founder, Dana, is an award-winning fashion designer. Our co-founder, Mo, used to work at Google and has a master's from Oxford. And Nadim is the ex-general manager of Elisab. So I literally picked the most important things from each person's bio so that I can build trust with my audience. So when they look at this, like, oh, this is a team that knows what they're doing. Now, the second team that you have is actually your team of advisors and investors. I usually put that after I say how much money we're trying to raise, right? So which takes us to the ask slide. The ask slide is basically you trying to say how much money you want to raise and what are you going to spend this money on. Okay, so for example, in our case, we wanted to raise $2 million so that we, do partnerships, we hire more talent, we focus on app downloads, build a bigger community of vendors, and so that we keep on, developing the product. And we're already backed by these investors. So we would show that, we already have some traction. And there's another slide, where did I put it? All right, so there's one slide, I don't know, this one. Yeah, so we would also show who we're already backed by, okay? And this builds another type of trust. And then you have the projections. So I was looking for the projections. You have the projections. The projections are very important to show because this really shows the ambition that you have. Now, there are 2 mistakes or 3 mistakes that we typically see in the projection slide. The first one is that most people overestimate what they can achieve in the first year. So a lot of people think that within the first year, they're going to go out and they're going to get 100,000 clients and make $1 million. It's usually not the case. But the other problem is that most people underestimate what they can achieve in 3 to 5 years. Right? So most people overestimate the first year and underestimate 3 to 5. So how do you do this? When you're putting together the projections, you want to make sure you start off with the sound business logic that explains to the world, what your monetization looks like and how you're going to make money, right? You know that in the beginning, it's a trial and error. So you start off a bit conservative. So your first year and even your second year, they're going to be trial and error. And this is me saying first to second year, not from today, but second year, when you actually launched your product in the market. So it usually takes somewhere between 12 to 24 months for you to validate, to test, to get a product market fit, and then it slowly start building. But the third mistake that we see is we see that most people are way too conservative 3 to 5 years down the line, and that actually is counterproductive because what investors want to see, they want to see how ambitious you are. They want to see what is your vision for the long term, right? They know you're most probably not going to hit the numbers. They know that really well. Everyone watching you knows that whatever number you put on stage, you will most probably not hit those numbers. But we want to see your ambition. We want to see the vision. We want to see how big do you want to go. If you come and you tell me we're going to make $2 million in 5 years in Lebanon, no one's going to give you a penny, right? Because they want to see that you're going to expand globally. You are aware that you need to raise investment and you are trying to make a difference in the world. You are trying to have an impact. Because if you're just going to make $2 million, whatever amount of money we give you, right, it's not going to be worth it for us because investors are trying to make a 20 times or 30 times return on their investment within 5 to 10 years. Okay, so they're trying to always back the most ambitious founders because anyways, they know that 90% of startups fail. So if 90% of startups fail, they want to go in and they want to invest in 20 companies because they know that from these 20 companies, 1 or 2 of the companies will make a 30 times return for them. So they already made their profit, they already made 10 times profit off of these 2 companies alone on their entire investment portfolio. Then you have another 5 to 6 companies that will make a 2x or 3x return for them. You have another 5 companies that will just break even, and they're probably going to lose money on 5 or 6 companies. So that's how investors do their math. So when they're looking at you, they want to be like, okay, is this potentially one of my 20x or 30x's? If you are, then they're interested. If you're not potentially a 20x or 30x, then they're not interested. And I'm sharing with you guys some of the secrets of how this works because whenever you start with all these mistakes. And over the last couple of years, we've successfully raised a lot of money. So we've raised millions of dollars from around the world. And as a program, we've helped more than 60% of our startups raise funding. So those are a bit the best practices on how you really can make it done. And at the end, you want your contact information so that people can reach out to you. It's always a good idea to add a link, to the product so that they can reach out. And please don't use @gmail.com or hotmail.com email addresses even from now, because if we're watching a presentation and then you're on stage with a email that says Reem at reemalharidi@gmail.com, we're in our minds, it's like this person is not even serious enough to buy the domain name, right? They're not even committed enough to the company to invest in a domain and a professional email. So the least that you can do is at least have Reem at whatever your company is.com. Okay, so how do we sound natural on stage, right? Because at the end of the day, the content that you have is very important, but content is only 20% of the work. 80% of the work is how you present. 80% of the work is how you show up, and it's how you deliver the message that you want to deliver. Okay, so first of all, what I want to tell you is whenever you watch the most natural presenters, and I think the most natural presenter in the world is Steve Jobs. I don't know if you guys have ever watched any of his presentations during the product demos, or please go and watch the presentation of Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone. He is such a showman, okay? And it's the single most natural presentations you'll ever see. People think that natural means spontaneous. Natural actually means being over-prepared. It means being so prepared that you know every single word that you're going to say. So Steve Jobs has a recording where he's talking about his preparation process. He prepares for more than a week before giving a keynote. He prepares for more than 50 hours. So every time he has a presentation to give that he's never done before, he would prepare 50 hours for it. So what does it mean to be prepared? What does the preparation process look like? My advice is write down every single word that you're going to say, because it actually really does help. But again, this only helps if you're giving it enough time. So if you start this a day before your presentation, it's probably not going to work, right? So you need to give this the time. You need to respect the process of being on stage. Okay. The second thing is you need to practice. If Steve Jobs practiced for 50 hours, and that's one of the best presenters of the world, it means you also need to do the same thing. And finally, record yourself as you're presenting. So what I would usually do is I write down every single thing that I want to say. And then I actually start practicing by looking at the slide and reading what I've said. I do that, and then I do that a couple of times just to get the hang of it. And then I would do it again, but I would record myself doing it. And the reason why I would record myself the first time is because I want to see how much time does it take me to read it. And then I assume that if I'm presenting, it's actually going to take me a bit more time, right? Because if I'm reading, I'm probably not adding any pauses. But as I'm presenting, I need to pause a bit. So just like I'm doing right now. So I'm talking, but I have to give it a small pause so that you can absorb what I'm trying to explain to you. Right? So first type of recording is for me to test the time. Afterwards, what happens is slowly I start not looking at my notes anymore. So I would try to present the first 3 to 4 slides without my notes. And I recorded because I want to listen to what I said, and then I want to compare it a bit with the notes, and I want to see if it feels natural. And then you want to listen, right? Because there's a difference between me reading something and hearing something. Sometimes it might read nice, but it's not nice when I listen to it. So I would change it so that it's a bit more stage appropriate and more simple. And then you keep on doing that and keep on doing that until you can do the full presentation without looking at your notes. When you can do the full presentation without looking at your notes, this is where the actual work starts. Because now what we need to start doing is now we need to control the time. So if you have 3 minutes to present and you're going for 5 minutes, now it means we need to go back to the notes and we need to start removing some time. Right? And then you try to keep it as efficient as possible until you can hit your time. Now, if you have 3 minutes, you don't aim for 3 minutes when you're recording and practicing. You aim for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So you always want to add that 10-second buffer because I promise you it will take a bit more time when you're on stage. And the reason why you also want to record yourself, because sometimes when you're presenting, you might accidentally say something that sounds better than what you wrote. And then instead of you trying to remember it, you can just go back and listen to it. Once you nail down the timing, now what you have to do is you need to practice without your slides. So you want to practice without your slides because you want this to be so natural that you can actually explain it without having to look. Because that way, when you're on stage, all you have to do is to do this and it automatically refreshes your memory. You know exactly what you have to be saying now. If you can do all of these things, now you are a natural presenter. Now when you're on stage, people would be like, oh, this person is so natural. In their mind, natural means that it's not scripted. But what they don't know is that it is so scripted and it is so prepared that that's why you sound like the top 1% of presenters. And I promise you it works every single time. You just need to put in the work. Okay, and we're going to work together on your stage presence. So there's a certain way to be present on stage. Most presentations are 3 to 5 minutes. And I really suggest that you have the 2 versions always ready on you. I think if I'm not mistaken, for the demo day, you're going to have 3 minutes. So
Yes.
we usually do 3 minutes, plus we do a Q&A. For the Q&A, honestly, it's just 2 remarks. I didn't create a slide for it, but it's just 2 pointers that I have. The first one is anytime someone asks you a question, you need to try to understand what is the concern that they have and not just the question itself. So if I ask you, but don't you think this is, let's say, a hard market to get into, you need to understand what is my concern. My concern is that it might cost either too much money or that it needs expertise or that it already has too many players in it. So from my question, you need to try to understand what am I trying to express. Okay. And let's say you weren't clear on it, it is okay to ask. So it's always better to ask than to give an answer that is completely irrelevant. Okay, so if someone asks you, don't you think it's too hard of a market? It is okay for you to ask, can you please clarify whether you mean, is it too hard because it might be too expensive? And it depends on what you presented, right? Or because you think there's too much competition. So it's okay, but you need to know when to ask it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, please wait for them to finish asking their questions. Because sometimes we see people interrupting the jury in the middle of the question and they start answering. Okay, so take a breath, let them finish asking the question that they have. And third, whenever you're on stage, you're not there to fight, right? So you're not there to be protective. You're never on stage because you're trying to sell. You're always on stage, and this is always, you're always on stage with the mindset of I am here to educate. So I know something better than everyone else watching. And whatever question they ask me, I'm not going to get defensive. Instead, I'm going to be playing the role of the educator. So I'm going to explain to them and teach them something that they don't know. Okay, and it's very important for you to be relaxed. So there are actually ways where you can chill. I heard Steve, do you guys know what's his name? I want to say Stephen Robbins, but I know that's wrong. What was his name? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Tony Robbins?
Tony Robbins, yeah. So do you guys know Tony Robbins? Okay, so a couple of years ago, when I was starting my journey and I was preparing for my first presentation, I actually came across a video of Tony Robbins, and he was saying in his video that the difference between being nervous and being prepared before giving a speech is the same thing. And it's all in your mind, and you get to decide what those symptoms mean, which means before you go on stage, you're going to feel like your heart is racing. You're going to feel like you might be a bit sweaty. You're going to feel like you're a bit, agitated and so on. At this time, you can either say, okay, my heart is racing, I'm feeling, all this energy inside of me. Shit, I'm nervous. And then your system crashes because you just validated that you're nervous. Or you're like, okay, my heart is racing. I'm very agitated. You know what? I am ready. And that puts you in the right, because it's the same symptoms. The symptoms of being ready and excited and being nervous are exactly the same thing. So you mentally need to control that. And that's what I do. Even till this day, every time I need to go on stage or every time I need to present, my heart starts racing. You cannot control it. Every human has that. People that go on TV every single day before they go on TV, their heart starts racing. So every time you go on stage, you need to control the narrative. Okay, you need to decontrol your mind. You need to say, okay, I have this, it means I'm ready for the stage. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I like to listen to a bit of music before I go on stage. Okay, and that's why we also ask you to give us a piece of music so that it's your intro. So as you're going on stage, that same music usually would play. For me, for some reason, it was always E.T. by Katy Perry. For some reason, don't judge me. But that song gets me in the zone. So before I go on stage, I would put on my AirPods, I would listen to it. I get in the zone. I'm like, my heart starts racing. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And then that would usually be my background sound when I'm going on stage. So it really anchors me for it. And third, meditation works, whether you believe in it or not. A lot of people talk about it. So I like to sit before going on stage. I close my eyes and I just want to slow down my breathing a bit, because without you noticing, when your heart is racing or when you're nervous, your breathing becomes very shallow, which means you're breathing very fast. When you're breathing very fast, it increases the anxiety. The best way to reduce that is to slow down your breathing process. So I would sit, close my eyes, and just focus. Deep in, pause for 2 seconds, deep out, pause for 2 seconds. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, what I like doing as well is I like to visualize the end of the presentation. So before going on stage, I want to visualize that the presentation is done and everyone is clapping and everyone is happy and I'm happy and I go off stage, and for me it was a successful show. So every time I'm performing on stage, it's a show, right? And I want to make sure I performed in the right way. Again, and some small hacks for you guys. Please dress well, okay? Because when you dress well to a presentation, you feel more comfortable. And you're also showing people that you respect the process and people want to talk to you when you're dressed well. Okay, so dress well, network. So before going on stage, I like to meet as many people as possible, and then I want to go meet with them after the event as well. The reason why I want to meet as many people as possible before presenting is because when I'm on stage, I've already met you. You're more likely to listen to me because you're going to be like, oh, I already met this person. I know who this is. Even if it was just a very quick hi, right? So just a quick hi, present yourself, and then always have material and your elevator pitch ready. Material can be anything, right? It can be a brochure. In our case, we just show the application. So for me, the app is always the best show and tell. So whatever you have, if you don't have an app ready, have some material that visually allows a person to see what you're trying to build. And then second, you need to perfect the elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is a 10 to 15 second intro of what your company does. Okay, the reason why we call it an elevator pitch, it's the same. So if you meet someone in an elevator, you have until that person or you reach your floor. Okay, and that is what you're going to use in the event. So every time you meet someone, you want to tell them in 10 to 15 seconds, what is it that you're doing? And that will capture their attention. Okay, and then finally, the aim of the whole event, the aim is for you to book meetings. On average, it takes 9 to 10 copies to close an investment deal. Your key is how do I condense those into as many quick copies and so on. And there are small things that you can take into account. A lunch, for example, is worth 2 or 3 copies. Okay, an activity that you can do with them is worth around 3 copies. So if you know that one of the investors, for example, is excited for paddle, then invite them to a paddle game. Whenever you can connect with people as their peer, it works. So you don't want to be the one that's always asking for something, right? So a lot of times you want to be seen as their peer, you want to ask them for advice, you want to connect them as well. So fundraising and building a business, majority of it is a relationships game. And a relationship is give and take. So if you meet with someone who's always asking you for something, every time you meet, this person is asking you for something, would you want to meet with this person? No. If you meet with someone who is trying to add value, they're introducing you to others, sometimes they just want to connect with you based on the common activities or common friends that you have. Sometimes they need something from you, and sometimes they're giving you something in return. You're much more likely to want to spend time with this person because now it's a relationship and it's not a, maslahat thing. So investors are the same thing. Build the relationship. That's why it takes 9 to 10 copies. There's a very common, a very cheesy thing that says, every time you ask an investor, like, what do you look for? Every single time the answer is, oh, we invest in the founders, right? Have you heard this before? It's very common and it's actually true. So if they invest in the founders, then you want to be the type of founder they want to invest in. The best founders that they invest in are the ones that they see as their peers, the ones that they see as their equal. Okay, so build that relationship with them. Those are some links that can help you out. I strongly suggest you look into Y Combinator, okay, because it's the best startup program on the planet. They've graduated Uber, Airbnb, and countless others. So they have a free library where you can actually find a lot of the pitches. You can find samples of pitch decks. So most of the material that you also need to support you is there. And there's Beautiful.ai and Slidebean. So Slidebean can actually show you a lot of the presentations from other companies. That's where I take the presentation of Uber, Airbnb, and all the others for inspiration. And then Beautiful.ai can help you design presentation. But to be very honest, if I were you, I would just, pay $200-300 to a graphic designer and then have them help me create beautiful slides. So the way I do things is I usually prepare the content of everything. So all the text, the numbers, I divide them all into slides, and then I work usually with a graphic designer to help me turn my slides into something beautiful on stage. Okay, and that's it for me. Does anyone want to ask any questions?
Great, thanks, Arthur. How much time do we have? Like 10 minutes?
I can do 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yalla, let's start with Luna.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, Arthur, for the presentation and all the tips and tricks. I got a couple of questions. First, it's about the deck and especially the audience. So, for example, let's take Airbnb. Okay, so as Airbnb, there are multiple stakeholders for the product. There are the users that want to book the place, there are the owners of the place, and there are the investors. So the purpose of the deck is to talk to all three or only a specific audience?
No, it depends on what you're doing. Now, when you're presenting to investors, usually, right, the investor one needs to be a mix of all of them, but it's 80% investor because they also want to see what the user is going to see and what in Airbnb's case, what the owner of the apartment wants to see, right? So if you tell, for example, that, they make money, right? So apartment owners or hosts make money out of this, then it's like, okay, you are catering to that audience as well, but this is still an investor presentation. Now, when you're doing your presentation for, let's say in Airbnb's case, for the hosts, you need a different presentation for the hosts. When you're talking to the users, you need marketing and communication, right? So it's completely different. So there you're focusing more on the unique value proposition that the user is getting. But it's still important to take these unique value propositions and to put them in your investor deck, because that's what you're telling. You're telling the investor, this is what I'm giving my users, this is what I'm giving my hosts, right? So, but you will need different presentations as you go. So in our case, for example, we have investor presentation, and we have an investor presentation for the region. We have another one for the US, right? So we have two different investor presentations. And we update them every quarter, by the way. So our investor presentations are always updated. We have a presentation for vendors. We have a presentation for big influencers. And then we have another presentation for events, because we also partner with events. So for each one, we target something else. So you always need to cater to your audience.
Okay, clear. Thanks for that. Another question is about the fraction slide that you showed. So how I understood it is that traction is about what you have already done. But what about the products that are not live yet? They are still in building phase. So what
So
can
those
be
you
the
can,
traction about?
I usually show those in the solution and product slides. Okay, and you can add in the traction what you've already built as a product. So in your traction, you can be like, MVP is launched, right? And we have X many test users. We've gathered this much feedback. We have this much demand. We signed this letter of intent, or we have this proof of concept that is on the way. And in the next 6 months, we are also planning on launching this feature or that feature because they're currently under development. So you can customize the presentation in any way. At the end of the day, it's a story, right? So the whole story that you're trying to build is there's a very big problem in the world. No one has solved it. We believe we have the right solution. We have the right team to do it. This is how we validated, and this is how much money we need so that we can achieve this. So what you want is you want to build the trust around what you just said. So you want to prove to people that you're able to execute on this vision. So whatever builds trust, you add to the presentation.
Okay, clear. Another question is about the slide you shared about market size. So I guess Lemonade Fashion, it's an assumption. It started in Lebanon, maybe, right? And then expanded. Sure.
Yes, but that was always part of our plan, and that was always what we communicated. So
Okay.
you always design it for scale.
Yeah. So in the market slide, for example, if my product will launch in Lebanon at first, so my market size should focus on Lebanon rather than the global market size, correct? Or
But
still,
where are you planning on expanding to?
yes, I'm planning to expand globally, but at least for the
So
market study.
fine. So you want to expand globally. What's your second target? So you want to start Lebanon, you want to reach global. What's in the middle?
Let's say Gulf.
Okay, so then what you would say is this is a very big market. Around the world, it's worth about, I don't know, $600 billion. In the region, we saw that this is a $20 or $30 billion market. We're starting in Lebanon right now, which is a $200 million market, but this is where we are testing the product, right? And once we finish the testing and the validation, our aim is then to scale to the UAE, to KSA, and then to the rest of the region. And within the next 3 to 5 years, we want to extend it, I don't know, to the US or whatever. So that way, you show the global market size, and you showed us that you're starting in Lebanon. You admit that it's not a big market, but you're telling us that this is where I want to test it and then expand. But because if you go on stage and you just tell us, my product is for Lebanon, most investors are not going to be interested because Lebanon is always a very small market. And usually, if you're building a tech company, tech companies are very scalable platforms, right? So you really need to think a bit bigger. But again, it's all about the story. It's how do I link it together?
Okay,
Right.
we can take a couple of questions, quick questions. We have
Sure.
Joe, and then we have Aisha, and then we have to wrap it up.
Okay. So thank you for giving me the floor. This is John Ahmed. Thank you, Arthur, also for this session. So I have a few questions, but this is the most important one. So my service addresses multiple problems and could offer many solutions. But due to my current resources, I am starting with a limited set of features. So if I had more resources, I could develop more features simultaneously, which would also impact the cost and the revenue projection of my desired service. So should I present projections based on the minimal feature set that I will launch with, or include the broader potential if more features are added later? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I don't think you should add too many features in the beginning because you need to test, right? So you need to start simple. There's an acronym that summarizes this really well. It's called KISS, right? Which is keep it simple, stupid. So always keep things simple when you're building a startup and a business. You want to launch features fast and you want to test those features as fast as possible, right? And then you build it from there. But you want to build, first of all, deep. So you build so you go vertical first and then you go horizontal. Okay, but for vertical first. So you build deep and then you can start adding more features next to it. When it comes to the projections, I would suggest you split it. So you say, for example, in the projection in the first 2 years, this is what we're focusing on, and then we believe we can add these other features as well, and that would increase the projections even more. Okay, but always start simple and then validate and build it with the market. The biggest mistake most startups do is they wait way too long to launch their product and to validate it and to test it because they overdevelop the technology or they try to perfect whether it's their marketing or tech or so on. And the rule of thumb is if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you launched it way too late. All right, so launch, learn, make mistakes, keep it simple, grow it from there, and you can add those in the projection. And again, the projections don't need to be perfect. They just need to make sense. It means when you're walking an investor through the projections, they want to understand the business logic behind it. They want to understand that you understand that there's churn rate. You understand that, there's a cost of acquisition. You understand that people stop using your platform after a while, right? You understand that, there's a fluctuation of price or there's seasonality. You understand that you need to spend money on marketing. You understand that there's operational expenses, capital expenses, and so on. So they want to see the logic and they want to see the ambition. but it will always change. And I promise you, projections will always change.
Great. Okay,
Right.
last question from Aisha.
So basically, I have two questions, and I'll try to be very fast. So the first question, since we're still in idea validation, the
Aisha,
upcoming.
we can't really hear. There's some background.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but there's some background noise.
Sorry, I'm in a coffee shop. Do you prefer to text, send a text?
No, just tell us quickly. I'm trying to listen.
Okay, so my question is, since we are still in the idea validation program for the upcoming pitch, is it expected that our team to be fully formed? That's my first question.
No, it's usually in the idea stage validation, it's usually one or two founders.
Okay.
And the better it is formed, the better it is for you, right? But it's not a pre-requirement.
For the second, you advise us that when starting talking about the problem, with the goal to trigger the audience, I saw that Uber just listed the problems, but I had a different approach to just want to hear your input. Maybe since we have a limited time, is it recommended that we start with like storytelling, maybe describing the customer persona just to convey the problem? Or it's not recommended, just one statement.
All right, see, the customer persona is something you can do, but you have to be careful with it, because if you go on stage and you're like, let me tell you the story of Sarah, but Sarah does not really exist, right? Most times people are tired of listening to that, right? So you are your own persona. The people around you are your own personas. Ideally, what you want is you want to keep the story relevant, right? So if you want to use the persona story, make it relevant, make it someone that you actually know and something that is personal. So you use this as well to strengthen the trust between you and the investors, because, oh, you're someone from the industry, you're someone from this background, you're someone that has this experience. But don't go in a very, very long story that most people will ignore. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it is
And
actually
this is
my own
something we will
story.
work on together. Yes. So this is something we'll work on together. Once you prepare, because we're going to have a couple of pitch practices. And then in the first pitch practice, you're going to come, you're going to pitch. And then I'm going to listen. It's going to be me plus one or two other people. And we're going to give you advice on how to make it a lot better. So I would say don't over stress it at the moment. Just make sure you have the right structure, the presentation, and then we'll work on the rest.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Amazing.
Arthur, for the presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll share with you the slides and the videos. Please have everything done by Sunday, because next week we're going to start reaching out to you so you can pitch to us, and then we'll just move forward with the rest of the pitching cycle. Take care, everyone. Bye, Arthur.
Bye.